that the last 2-3 years it's getting worse and worse. Violence is
human negativity is that it's even unpleasant to the person who has it. There have been countless worlds like this, and each one has a different flavor and a different history. But the particular one that we live in is a very violent world. But really, when you think about what jealousy is, it's the desire that other people should not have what you want. When they get it, something that you wanted, and you didn't get it, then you feel jealous, and you feel like if you could remove that thing from them and give it to yourself, that's a kind of violence to the person. I would be willing to see that person fail and to see that person lose what they value so that I could have it. Sooner or later, everybody will find the anger in there that they have a problem.
Thank you very much, Geshe Michael, for taking this time. I want to talk about level 10, this upcoming, our upcoming level. Can you please start by explaining why you named it Impossible Anger?
Okay, good. I have this inner compulsion that when we do a new level, I don't want the level to be mistaken for a normal course. I think our courses are special. I think they are unique. And so I spend quite a while on the title of the course because I want to distinguish it from, just a general course about controlling your anger or something. I definitely didn't want to call it anger management. I think that's a misnomer. I don't think you can manage your anger. I think when you get angry, you especially can't manage it. So I don't feel comfortable with that word. And the idea is that if you really use the ancient wisdom of Asia to dig down to the causes of why we get upset or why we get angry, you can eliminate that cause completely. And then it becomes impossible for you to get angry. So that's the idea. And I'm not saying if you take this course for a few weeks, it will become impossible for you to get angry. But if you take this course for a few weeks, you're on your way to a place where nothing can upset you and nothing can get you angry. And that's why we call it impossible anger.
Wow, that's incredible. Great promise.
Yeah.
So you talk about these ancient books of Asia. Can you please tell me more about some of the books that you took from? I know that one of my favorite things about DCI is that it's not something that someone just came up with. It's very consistent methods of people who have had success. So can you please tell us about some of the diamonds you got?
Well, as you know, we have a team of translators. I designed that team about 50 years ago. And I didn't try steadily for 50 years, but I needed funding to pay the team. And finally, after many years, I was able to find some sponsors who were willing to support 12 different translators. And each one of them, and you are one of them, is working on a different language. So I identify 8 different discrete, completely different languages of ancient times. So for example, if you know one, you might not be able to read the other. And there are basically 8 different languages like that of this ancient ideas. And they, over the course of 25 centuries, I like to quote ancient English to people, and it's always the same, so I'm sorry, but one daughter brother with a shoulder salt to the doctor march at Paris to the road and bad every vein in Swiss local. Wishing good, wish we're doing together this the floor. This is English.
Wow.
from 500 years ago. And every language changes like that. And so it's possible that you can read 1 century's ancient books and you can't read the book from 2 centuries before that. And we're talking 25 centuries. So, so I had the opportunity to select from each one of those languages and each one of those translators the books that they are working on now. And the average project time is about 10 years on a book like that. Some of them are projected out for 50 years. But the books that we're working on, most of them talk about anger in some way or another because it's so important. Over the course of history, the great thinkers have identified stopping anger as one of the main causes of human productivity. We can become more productive and we can become more happy, obviously, if we learn to overcome our anger. So some of the books, excuse me, some of the books I was working on for this course your book was one of them, which is called The Crown of Knives. And this is mainly a book about the attitude of taking care of what we want first and not paying that much attention to what other people need or what other people could use. And then anger plays a deep role there. There's another book called Path to Entering the Middle Way, Umalajupa Madhyamakavatara. And it talks a lot about anger in the sense of trying to reach a place where we see that the people we feel upset at are not there. And therefore anger is an inappropriate response because the person you're angry at is not even there. And that's a very deep idea. And so I'd say that most of the books we're dealing with, on some level, they talk about anger. And in the idea of anger, I would include getting upset or even jealousy, which is in the ancient text, jealousy is just another form of anger. So like that, I think all of the texts that we're working with on some level will discuss anger because anger is so destructive.
Actually, I want to ask a follow-up question. I've never really understood why jealousy is considered as anger. Is it because you plant similar seeds, or what? Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I don't think normally we think of jealousy as being a form of anger. But really, when you think about what jealousy is, it's the desire that other people should not have what you want when they get it, something that you wanted, and you didn't get it, then you feel jealous. And you feel like if you could remove that thing from them and give it to yourself. Like, I don't know, if I'm jealous of someone who has a beautiful car and I can't afford a car like that, and then I feel like I would like to have that car, then there's a deep down inside, what you're saying is you would like to remove that car from them and have it parked in your garage, you know. Right. And that's a kind of anger at the person. That's a kind of violence to the person. I would be willing to see that person fail and to see that person lose what they value so that I could have it. And that's a kind of hatred, really. So jealousy is actually a kind of hatred and a kind of anger. In the ancient books, very interestingly, they distinguish between many levels of anger. And some of them are called like simmering, and some are called fire, and some are called explosion. And there's different words in the ancient languages for different flavors of anger. So it's not necessary that you're screaming and jumping up and down to have anger. You can have quiet anger, or you can have, I don't know, how do you say it? Anger that you're not actively expressing, but it's inside, it's burning you up quietly. And jealousy is that kind of anger. It's called sikpa, which means slow burning fuse or something like that.
How do you think one of these great philosophers would define anger as?
Whoa, that's a good question. I think it's a loss of your self-control. I think anger involves a loss of your self-control. I think it most often involves a desire to hurt another person. Like when you're angry, you're more destructive. You will even just break a chair, or you'll break a person's head. You know, when you're angry, you will do things like that. So I would say it's difficult to define in the ancient books because technically it's a kind of insanity and or a delusion. So in the ancient wisdom of Asia, the person you're angry at is not even there. The one that you feel angry at, by definition, is not even in the room. And then you break a chair, or you throw something, or you yell, or something like that. But on a very real level, if you understand that ancient thought, when you get angry, in English we say, oh, he's mad about nothing, or he's angry at nothing. And in the ancient wisdom, what you're angry at is never there. What you thought you were angry at, it's not, sometimes it's not there, or it's partly not there, or something like that. It's not in the room. And then you get angry. So to describe the emotion of anger in the context of the ancient wisdom, you have to mention a degree of insanity. You are hallucinating. It's a hallucination. All anger, by definition, involves a major hallucination. And we don't think like that in the Western countries. You don't say, oh, my husband got angry and he must be hallucinating or something like that. But it's understood in the ancient literature that all anger, which stretches from irritation to fury, is a kind of insanity, and you are having a hallucination always. So in the course, we worked a lot on every course we do. It kind of has two levels or two divisions, and one is talking about ultimate understanding of the world around you, understanding how the world works on a very, very deep level. And that's the level at which a person who's angry is legally insane, okay? Like they are angry at something which is not there. So there's that kind of anger, and there's that kind of treatment for the anger, which we would say is an ultimate treatment. And then that person's anger becomes impossible. When they understand the treatment or the medicine for the anger, they couldn't be angry. But to get to that state of understanding, deep understanding of the world around you, there's a lot of smaller angers you should knock out so that your mind is clear. So it's a very interesting progression in the manual. We have both kinds of treatments are presented there. One is sort of an ultimate treatment. It's where you catch yourself being insane. And then that's the end of anger. You can't be angry after that. But to get to that degree of clarity requires a lot of intermediate attempts to stop anger and to suppress anger. And so we offer both methods. And I think every single person in the world is dealing with anger at some level. And so the manual has to cover the whole range of people in the world. Some are more angry by nature than others. And then some are dealing with a different kind of anger than other people. So we try to, in the manual, we try to identify maybe 10 kinds of anger. And then we talk about the treatment or the antidote for those kinds of anger. And the idea is that each person who takes the course can find in the manual their particular specialty of anger. And by the way, your specialty changes. You know, if you get rid of one form of anger, you may, it's a common experience when you get rid of one flavor of angry, it feels like the other flavors got worse. And that's because of you have more time to focus on them. So it's not that they get worse, but when you eliminate one flavor of anger inside of yourself, the others seem to get stronger, and it's an illusion. They don't get stronger. It's just that you have fewer angers to look at. So they look bigger. Okay. So anyway, as you progress, the manual is designed very carefully after, 30 years of work to identify different types of anger. And then as you work through the manual, you will come to, on a certain page, you'll say, oh, that's my specialty. That's the anger I have a problem with, you know. And then you can, I think that the beauty of the manual, these manuals are long. They're 200-300 pages, you know. And so we have lots of room to describe all the kinds of anger. And I think sooner or later everybody will find the anger in there that they have a problem with most, and they'll find the antidote there. And it's really nice to meet someone when you have a problem inside. It's really nice to meet someone who understands you, you know, who says, you have a problem with anger number 17, and you're like, yeah, I always thought so, but nobody understood that. And then you feel like this person can help you if they really can define the kind of anger you're feeling. And that takes time. It takes time to get to know a person and help them identify what's their strongest flavor of anger. And there's many flavors. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I know a lot of
Yeah, yeah.
So I think you are, in my perception,
Be careful with that.
you're one of the people that I've seen deals with the most, and I do mean the most stressful or anger-inducing situations, and you manage to keep calm. Can you please tell us what your journey has been with these ancient ideas, and one or two things that you have learned that have really helped you in that?
The story of my life is that my teacher, I was in a monastic living situation for years, 8 years. And then my teacher encouraged me to start a company, and as an experiment in my life, in learning to live. And he said, you can't really understand the pressures that a normal person faces until you work, until you have to work for your money in a company. So I had an inheritance, and I also had no desire to work in a business. I wanted to stay in the monastery. And then he said, no, if you do that, you'll never really understand the problems that normal people face. So I think you should go to work, and you should. I didn't need the money at the time. And he said, go to work and start a business. And so I helped to start a business, myself and two other partners. And one of the partners is a man from Israel. His name is Ofer Azerlot. And he's sort of the genius of the company. And I have a story about him. So I worked with him daily for 12 to 15 hours a day. I mean, we worked hard. And for 19 years.
Wow.
And I rarely missed a day of work. And in those 19 years, I never saw him lose his temper. I never saw him really get angry. And I remember an incident when I guess we were about 3 years into the company, and we were reaching $1 million in sales. Eventually, it reached $250 million a year. But we had just broken $1 million, and we were all like feeling really good, And then in a diamond jewelry company, an armored car will come several times a day to do a pickup of the diamonds or the diamond jewelry. And these are serious people. They get robbed. People are trying to rob them all the time. So they wear guns. They are hard people, tough people. And they put the shipments in an armored car. And the whole trip from the building to the armored car is a very tense thing. And they are carrying maybe millions of dollars of diamonds or jewelry. And they are in New York City, and they're surrounded by some rough people. And the whole experience is traumatic. And they do it all day. And so we have to be prepared to meet them. The shipment has to be checked, double-checked, triple-checked. And then they'll show up at the door. It has to be two guys, one to cover the other. And they have their guns ready. I mean, the guns are out or the guns are in their hand. And they come to pick up the box is usually only this big because it's diamonds. And it's a tense moment in the day. So we would have to be ready 2 or 3 times a day for the armored car. And we were late that day. And we were rushing, and we were throwing diamonds into a metal box, and then you have to seal it. Then you do special strings, and you do wax seals all over the box, and then you do metal seals, and we were stamping everything and getting it, and we were a little bit behind, and they came, and they're like, we're ready, we got 3-minute window here. And we're like, oh. And we kind of got the box together quickly and we gave it to them, And then we were doing all the paperwork afterwards. And I looked at it and I said to my assistant, I said, I think you wrote the wrong address on the box. We checked the paperwork and it was going to the largest jewelry company in the world at the time, which was Zales. 1,500 stores. He says, you put the wrong, I said, you put the wrong address on the box. And she's like, oh my God, And so we had to go into the main investor and we had to say, we just reached $1 million in sales and we just sent $1 million of diamonds to the wrong address. And we went in to tell him, Mr. Azerlot. And she asked me to go with her because she was afraid. And I went with her. And I don't know, I had this bodhisattva attack and I said, we put the wrong address. And he goes, okay, all right. Let's get on with the day. call the insurance company, tell them what happened, let's be, and then she goes, I forgot to insure the box. There's no insurance on the box, I was in too much of a rush. So it's not only $1 million loss, it's unrecoverable. And the entire value of the company was lost in the last few minutes. And he goes like this, Mr. Azalan goes, okay, all right, get a hold of them, see what you can do, And I was shocked, I never saw a human being control themselves in so perfectly. And that was 19 years. I had him for 19 years. During the day, I had this person who had overcome anger. Apparently, I never saw him really get angry, never raised his voice. And then I would go home, and my teacher from Asia would teach me these great books about how to stay patient. And I had this perfect combination of two people in my life. One is putting this kind of patience into real life, and the other is teaching the theory behind it perfectly. And I just be honest, sometimes I get confused between the two people. So anyway, that I was very, very fortunate for about 20 years to be around these two people. So I think one of the greatest ways to learn how not to get angry is to watch other people who are good at it. So, yeah.
Oh.
And so I think it rubbed off.
Right. Great.
Yeah.
Awesome. So there's a couple of levels in DCI that the topic is not very pleasant. We have addictions, we have anger, or relationships, right?
Yeah.
So it's definitely something that would benefit a lot of people greatly.
Yeah.
But they're not, like, at least addiction and anger is not something that the normal person wants to really think about.
Yeah.
How do you think we can encourage people? What would you say to people to encourage them to take some time to do it?
I when you ask me the question, and as you ask me the question, I start thinking about it, and I think about my own addictions or my own problems, and I think that we don't want to think about them. I think if we're an angry person, for example, we have a block about thinking about it. We don't want to think about it. And then if you have an addiction, I don't know, it could be cigarettes, could be gambling, anything, pornography, you don't want to think about it. You don't want to face it. And I think that's the nature of most negativities, human negativity, is that it's even unpleasant to the person who has it. Obviously, they're a family member, or they'll say you have an anger problem or you have an addiction problem, and then and it hurts the family member, and then we don't want to think about it. We'll try to change the subject, or we won't want to face it, and so to sign up for a course, which is about how to stop your addictions or how to stop your anger, it takes a lot of strength, I think, just to sign up for it. It takes a lot of self-wisdom about yourself to admit, even just to yourself. You don't have to tell anybody else, right? They say, what are you doing? You say, I'm taking a business course. But, I think the hardest thing is to admit it to yourself. And when you sign up for a course like this, and I don't think there's any way to make it more pleasant, like change the name or something to extreme friendliness or something. I don't think there's any way to hide the real topic, which is anger or addiction. But I think the first step of every addict, even if anger is what you're addicted to, is to admit to yourself that you have the addiction. So I think just the process of putting the course out there with its real name, it's kind of allowing our friends and customers or clients to take that first step just by signing up for the course, you see. So kind of the first thing you learn is something about yourself when you have the courage to sign up. Before you hear one word out of the course, if you have the wisdom to undertake a course of study, to study your anger or to study your addictions, in a way it means you're ready to start. So I think it's cool. I think the client always takes the first step.
Awesome. Now, can you tell us about some of the benefits that someone might get if they really practice these principles?
Yeah.
How their world changed,
I don't know, my friends who know me well, even friends who don't know me well, they know I'm obsessive about my time, and I had some experience in my earlier life about my own death, and I know that sounds as weird or strange, but actually we all know we're going to die, and we have different levels of awareness about our death. Some of us stuff it down and we ignore it. We kind of pretend it's not going to be soon or something like that. And then there's other people who the doctor said you have cancer or something, and then they start thinking about their death more actively. And I think if you're fortunate in your life, you may have a near-death experience or something, which informs you that you don't have much time. And every hour you have here is extremely precious. Like, I don't think you can put a price on it. Price means, I'll give you $1,000 an hour if you'll do this, or I'll give you $1 million an hour if you'll do this. But no one can pay you for an hour of your time. Once you lose an hour of your lifetime, there's no way to recover it. You can lose money. You can lose your wife or husband. You can lose a child. You can lose your house. Or you can get something back, if you work hard, but the hours of your life are irreplaceable. So for me, with this kind of very intimate inner clock that I'm aware of, I'm desperate to avoid any waste of my time. And I don't mean, this is not worth my time or this is not worth my time. I don't mean that. Yesterday I took down the Christmas tree. I spent how long? 4 or 5 hours. And it was fine. And it was worth it. That was worth my hours. But if I have a chance in my life to not waste an hour that I don't want to waste, or it's not valuable, then, oh man, I'll sign up for this course. And I have to say, the emotion of anger, at all the degrees of anger, from slight irritation up to throwing things in the house, which is many degrees of anger, right? And many off branches, like jealous anger, all kinds of anger. The one thing they have in common is they take time. And they take time in an insidious way. They steal your time. You keep thinking of, when you get really angry, that can take a day or 2 days or 10 days because it keeps coming back. The memory of what made you upset thinking about it, thinking how it happened, thinking who caused it. It all takes time, brain time. So physical time is okay, I have to wash the dishes. I enjoy washing the dishes. It's physical time. I can actually do some pretty good meditations washing the dishes in the evening. But when you're angry, you can't use that time for anything. It's a total loss. And every minute you're angry gives birth to 10 more minutes of anger. Like if you don't, it's like Hydra. It's like that snake with two heads, right. And you cut one off and two more grow. Yes. And anger is like that. When you think about who made you angry, or you think about what you're upset about, by the next morning it's double. And you're spending twice the time. So for a person who is super obsessive about not wasting irreplaceable minutes, a course in anger is well worth the investment. If you ask me to spend 2 days, 4 or 5 days, learning ancient techniques that will remove anger from me, I'll sign up. And I signed up a long time ago, and I worked on it, and the motivation was like that. The motivation was, I don't want to give anger my time. Anger is a stupid, ugly guy, and he doesn't deserve my golden lifetime. I don't want to give this guy my time. It's super precious. No one can give me more. And so I think just from that point of view, if you can study your anger, and if someone helps you study your own anger, then even just your hours in business are much, much more powerful, 100 times more powerful. If no one in business can even upset you, if you can lose $1 million box in $1 million company and not get off balance, you're right back to work in 10 minutes. Wow. Then I'd say you're going to be successful. Yeah, I think so.
Wow. I'm sold.
Okay.
I want to talk about another effect of anger. So we're a company that talks about seeds, right? And we often talk about how anger can destroy millions of good seeds. Can you please tell us more in detail how exactly this happens?
Yeah, there's a concept that comes up in the manual. Mm-hmm. I'm not even sure if it's the same context, but it's called Maumba Makewe Chichen in the ancient books. Mm-hmm. It took me a long time to understand this idea because my teacher at the time couldn't speak English. Mm. And I couldn't speak their language very well. And I remember this word, Maumba Makewe Chichen. Maumba means in the future. Makewa means will not happen. And then Chichen means the subject of a logical argument. And I'm like, subject of a logical argument that in the future won't have. I couldn't understand the word, and I spent months trying to understand it. And what it means is that a person who has mastered the theory of anger. You see, so the cool thing about this course is you're going to get a degree in angership or something. I don't know what you call it. Somebody asks you, what degree did you graduate with? You say, I have an angership degree. And it means I did a study of anger. And I did maybe a 2-3 month study of anger. And because I was using 100 generations of wisdom, the best ideas of 100 generations. You're not talking about a psychiatrist who this month wrote a bestseller or something like that. You're talking about 100 generations of the best ideas, So I studied it. I learned it. I'm not a master of it, but there was some low-hanging fruit there. There were some basic ideas that were easy, and they didn't take me much time, and I learned them, and they work. And it's already saving me a huge amount of time. So I think this one example, Maumba Makewe Chechen, means with a sufficient study of the process of how we get upset at any particular moment of the day, it is possible to make all of the coming upset moments in your whole life non-events. Okay, isn't that cool?
Yeah.
So let's say you and me are gonna get, I don't mean angry, I mean upset, I mean irritated. Let's say you and me are gonna get irritated 3 times a day for the next year, so that's 1,000. And then let's say we're gonna live 20 more years, so that's 20,000. That's 20,000 events of irritation that will interrupt the flow of my workday and my happiness. Okay. Now, if there's a way that I could do some magic to make them non-events, to make them never happen, moments of irritation that were supposed to happen that can now never happen, then wow, that's so fun, that's so cool, and that's a big theme of this manual. We're gonna learn how to pinpoint future moments of everything from irritation to extreme anger, and we're gonna do some magic in the present moment that prevents them from happening when they were supposed to. And that's really awesome, I think.
Wow. Okay. I want to ask you another question about this process of getting the material for the manuals. In a previous interview, you were telling me about how you get the cream of the cream of the best. You already have the best books for the last 2,500 years.
Yeah.
And you can get that. I mean, even for us that we work for, it's I don't know. I tend to think of bestsellers, but those is just bestsellers of this year or of these. I don't know, 35 years.
Yeah.
How is it? What's the process of getting these? I know that must be why you're so passionate about it. Can you tell us more about that?
The word that comes up in my mind, and you're going to be surprised, is incest. And incest means improper relations between people in a family, like between an uncle and a nephew or something like this. Improper relationship. But sometimes in philosophy we use that in a good way, meaning intermarriage of great minds. So, and great mind comes along every 300 years or something like that. A really great mind in this current world comes along like every 300 years or so. And the quality, part of what happens to people with great minds is that they tend to recognize other great minds, even across the centuries. So it's very typical in this tradition that a great thinker in the 2nd century AD will be very attracted to a thinker of the 5th century BC, 700 years apart. But they feel a connection, a family connection. So it's very common in this tradition that a truly great mind will seek out other great minds, even if they're already passed away 700 years ago. And they will spend their time with those minds. And then you get this effect of, I call it incest, or I don't mean that, but I mean,
Yes.
they start to marry each other, you know, like the guy in the 5th century BC, the guy in the 2nd century AD hooks up with him philosophically, and then he trains somebody who trains somebody who trains somebody, and then 500 years later, there's a super genius. So every 300, 400 years, there's a super genius. And then they tend to how do you say that? Intermarry mentally. You know, they tend to read each other's books. They tend to preserve each other's books, translate each other's books, and they tend to want to stay with each other mentally and spirit, not in spirit. They want to be together. And so it builds on itself. So I think what happens is that probably one of these super moral geniuses, and I'm not talking a scientific genius or something like that, a moral genius, like the founders of the great religions in this world, most of them I would say are moral geniuses. They tend to interact with each other on some level. And then that gets stronger and stronger and stronger. So I think what happens is, if you have an opportunity to meet one, it's kind of natural that you will, how do you say that? You will network to others. And then you will be swimming in these guys. And that's what happens.
Wow. Okay. You know, as you were saying that, another question came in my mind. We've heard from other of your courses, one of the great books, Abhidharma, right? That it says that these kind of ideas tend to degrade with time. But then you have what you just said, that every 300 years a genius comes along. It would seem to me that they can only get better. I mean, if more time passes, means more geniuses have come. So, which one is? Or what do you think about that?
I think it is true that these, well, you can call them a moral genius or as inner genius happens every, say, 300 years. But the world we live in, and supposedly there have been countless worlds like this, and each one has a different flavor and a different history. But the particular one that we live in is a very violent world. And it, you know, there are descriptions of worlds that are not like this at all. There's no war, there's no personal hatred, there's no crime. Like that, there are places, supposedly, there are places where they have worked these things out already. And we're sort of in a dark period in this world, where we have the capacity to end the world in half a day. And it's very possible that it could happen. So that we're in a time and place in which great ideas are constantly threatened of extinction. They can be made extinct. There are forces in this world. The burning of the great library of Alexandria, thousands of years ago. And I don't know, things like that. There are times in history when whole civilizations accumulated wisdom is destroyed in a few weeks. And that happens over and over again. So I think that explains partly why it happened in this world. We live in a particularly violent global culture. We have a global culture of competition. Violence is accepted as an option. Killing another person or wounding another person is accepted as a political option, for example. And in that kind of a civilization, if you want to call it civilization, uh, it's very possible for great ideas to be lost. And I think what's, in my opinion, it tends to be cyclical. In other words, great advances or inventions in moral behavior are accomplished, and then they're held for a while, and then there's a big war, or there's a big epidemic, or a famine, and those people who understood it die, and they don't pass it on. And then there's a period of chaos again. And then, slowly the knowledge is accumulated again. So I think in our particular global circumstances, this kind of wisdom will have to be rediscovered from time to time by people who are sensitive. And they should build it up. And then things will happen that destroy it. And then it will have to start again. And then in theory, we will reach a point where the wisdom is strong enough that people will no longer even consider violence. They won't think of the possibility of violence as a human method which can achieve anything. See, sooner or later that idea will die out because it's wrong. It's mistaken. It's primitive. Like the telephone replaced the telegram. Sooner or later it will be replaced by the seed system.
Thank you very much. I just have one last question. I don't know, particularly where we are now. It seems that the last 2-3 years it's getting worse and worse. Violence is, I don't know, violence in the world seems to be seems to be growing. What advice would you give to people that might be listening to this
My first instinct is to say, World War II, which my father fought in World War II. My wife's father fought in World War II. That was roughly 75, 80 years ago. And it killed 100 million people. And it was a true world war, meaning a great many of the countries in the world were killing people. The Axis and the Allied powers covered, I think, 50 countries or something. So you're talking the great majority of countries were killing. And so if you study history, or if you're exposed to history, I think, or if you think about history, on a historical, point of view, we're doing well. Like we had one world war in the 1910s, 1917 to 1909 something. Then 25 years later, we had a Second World War. First World War, about 20 million people died. Second World War, 100 million people died. And the average lifespan of a human being is increasing in this world. And the numbers for starvation have dropped radically. And it's funny, nobody talks about it. I don't know why. But the number of people a year who starve to death without insufficient food is the lowest it's ever been in recorded history. We are doing, and they think a lot of that might be because of computers and automation of delivery times have reduced usually waste of food is 40% or something. We waste 40% of the food we grow because it doesn't get delivered someplace on time. And now computers are quietly helping us to time everything correctly. And there's very, very little starvation, relatively, in the world right now. So I think So my first answer is that it's good to think of in the long term. Things we're not doing so bad compared to the last few generations before us. That's one answer, and then secondly, historically in the great books, if you're in a period of time when people live to an average of 60 to 80 years, say, you're already in the bad times. Okay, so meaning the last 50,000 years, in the viewpoint of the ancient literature, would be considered a low time. The difference between World War II and now is not considered much. The entire lifespan of humanity in the last 50,000 years on a universal level is embarrassing. It's only 70 years or something. And we are capable of living much longer if we had sufficient medical knowledge or knowledge of how the body works and things like that. So according to the great Asian books, we are in a long slide for thousands of years, and we'll come out of it. They say we'll come out of it. They say things will get better, and we will recover. So I think at DCI I feel like we're doing our little part to help that happen. I don't have this delusion of grandeur where I think we're the only ones in the world who understand what's going on or something like that. I think many people understand what we need to do, and I think slowly we're doing it. And I think if we all just keep working to our capacity and having fun while we do it, I think the apparent increase in violence will disappear. I'm sure it will, actually. So.
Thank you. Thank you for your time, and thank you for creating these beautiful levels.
Yeah. Welcome.